Is the T-spin cheating? Why does it even exist? Isn't classic NES Tetris the one true pure Tetris? I hear stuff like this all the time, and my main answer is that the T-spin is part of an official system by the Tetris company itself, which includes the original Tetris creators Alexei Pajitnov and Hank Rogers. The T-spin is part of what's called the super rotation system, which is part of a larger system called Tetris Guideline. But what if we dove deeper? What if we looked at why this was created? Well, why don't we ask one of the creators themselves? Tetris Forever is not only a collection of retro Tetris games, but actually an interactive documentary on the lore of Tetris both past and present. This includes interviews with Alexei and Hank. In one of those interviews, Hank specifically talks about the creation of the modern Tetris Guideline System. Here's what he has to say.
When finally we took control of Tetris in 1995, and we formed the Tetris company, the first thing we did is we standardized Tetris across all platforms. We say to every licensee, says, look, your game has to be better than any other game that's come before, and yet has to contain Tetris. And so as a result, Tetris improves over time. I mean, we treated Tetris like Disney treats Mickey Mouse, you know? So the colors had to be exact, the rotation had to be exact, the timing had to be exact, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you look at the old Tetris, Tetris on Game Boy, Tetris on Sega, they were completely different. On the Game Boy, when a piece drops, you can rotate it as it's falling. And that's visual rotation. It actually looks like it's rotating on a spot. If you land the T-piece on its back, then it's stuck. There's no way you can rotate it anymore. On the Sega, if you rotate that T-piece as it's falling, it looks like it's jumping around in a little circle. It's not rotating on a spot. You can drop it, and then you can still rotate it once it's landed. It actually has to jump up to be able to rotate. On the Game Boy, you do all your thinking while the piece is falling, and on the Sega, you drop it, and then you do your thinking. It's just a different way to play the same game. So I came up with a rotation system we call it super rotation. And the way super rotation works is while it's falling, we do visual rotation, which is the Game Boy rotation. Then once the piece has landed and this doesn't work anymore, then it'll try this. And so what we did was we created a rotation system that could accept both players from both systems, because before that they couldn't cross over. They were just too different.
And over time, there's something like called a T-spin, where you can do the same thing with the T-piece, and like if you put the T-piece in the right space and clear lines, then it has the same score as.
So, where does NES Tetris fit in all this? Well, Tetris Forever goes into the history in more depth, but to summarize for you, NES Tetris is not actually the first Tetris ever released. It's not even the first Tetris ever released by Nintendo. Famicom Tetris and even Game Boy Tetris preceded NES Tetris. And there are at least a half a dozen Tetris games released before that, each with their own rotation systems and scoring systems. In fact, the very first Tetris game Alexei developed was for the Electronica 60, and it didn't even score points for clearing lines at all. You only earned points for the pieces that spawned on the board. So modern Tetris looked to standardize Tetris across all future releases once Alexei and Hank were able to take over the license. Here's Hank speaking more in depth about the aspects of guideline Tetris.
And we also had to create the bag system.
So you're not going to get stuck with like 7 Z pieces. That could happen, and then you're really messed up.
In the original Tetris, the pieces are completely random. I remember checking into a hotel. I said, oh yeah, you have something to do with Tetris? Yeah, you know, it's watching me, and it doesn't give me the eyepiece when I need it. And I said, it's completely random. I said, no, it's not. It's definitely watching me. I said, sorry, I know exactly what it's doing. It's random. If you're waiting for the eyepiece, sometimes it doesn't come. The way the bag system works is that you have 7 tetraminos. You put them in a bag, you shuffle them, and then you pay them out. Then you put them back in the bag, shuffle them again. So then if you have an eyepiece come out, the worst situation is that it can be at the beginning of the first bag and at the end of the second bag. So that means what? 13 pieces later, you're guaranteed to get an eyepiece.
So then you can start strategizing on how you play the game versus everything is up to luck.
It makes it more predictable. And so you could say that Tetris lost something, but because of the variance, we had to do it. In Tetris Worlds, we created 6 different versions of Tetris. I mean, 5 different ones. There's Tetris and then 5 variants. You know, one where if you clear a line, the pieces above fall down, and so you can get a cascade going. One of them, you made squares, 4x4 squares. You get extra points if you cleared a line that had part of a square in it. In order to do that, we needed to have a hold piece, because there's no way you can actually get enough pieces of. You would have to wait 2 cycles for that piece to come back. The bag system, it kind of stuck in there. I'm kind of like, now we're having second thoughts because we're back to original Tetris. Why need the bag system? You could do a bigger bag, maybe a double bag, in which case you could have an eye, or just no bag.
Notice how even now he talks about whether or not we should look back at a more traditional Tetris model with the removal of the bag system. In other words, Tetris is still evolving after 40 years. Just look at Tetris Effect, which was released in 2018 with the zone mechanic. Innovation in Tetris still continues to this day. So, to answer the question at the start, is the T-spin cheating? Although T-spins are a newer mechanic, no, they're not cheating. It didn't exist at the start, but at some point, Tetris became so popular and game-changing that it spawned countless number of variations, some with spins, some with none. NES Tetris was one of those variations that didn't, and although NES Tetris is still one of the most popular variations, it's simply just that, a variation. Who's to say this variation or more modern variations or something like TGM are better? That's simply a matter of opinion. Either way, in the end, Tetris is Tetris, and Tetris is timeless. And as Alexei says,
that's the realization of my dream. Enjoy, play Tetris.
this is my TED Talk. Thanks for watching.